Excellent. Thank you, Abby. We're going to go ahead and jump right in.
Sound.
Ethan, do you want to give any preamble, or would you like me to just start it off?
No, you're welcome to go right ahead. I guess I'll just say thank you to everyone at Agency Landscape and Planning, to Bree and Rhiannon and Abby, and thank you so much for putting this together.
We're really excited, and thank you for your coordination, and thanks to everyone for being here. So we'll jump in. If anyone has questions about Zoom as we're going through, you've probably been on many meetings now in this format, but you can mute and unmute. You can stop your video, as Abby said. Chat us any questions. Use the chat to do that as we go forward. And as Abby said, we're going to be recording just so that we can go back and relearn things if we need to. And I'm really sorry if I have some sound effects in the background of an unhappy toddler who is resisting bath with her dad. Hopefully she'll get over that before we get too far. Okay, so we're going to dive right in and talk a little bit about the rapid recovery plans that we're embarking on and which North Brookfield is participating in. We're going to start off with just a little bit of introductions to the team that's working on this, kind of give a little bit of background to what the broader effort is about, what it's trying to achieve, how it's connected more broadly, and a really unique opportunity to be part of. Abby's going to walk us through some research and analysis that we've been doing so far, give a picture of the market, the physical environment, business environment, and what we're calling administrative capacity. And then we'll give a brief look at some next steps, because we're at the very beginning of this process, and we'll have some time for discussion. All right, so other than a really long plan name or sometimes an acronym, what is the LRRP, the Local Rapid Recovery Planning Effort? This is an initiative that's being undertaken by the state, but led by communities, large and small, across the Commonwealth. And it's really asking the question, coming out of the pandemic, how can communities, regions, and the state support small businesses to survive and thrive going forward? So it has two primary goals. The first is this moment, this very particular and unique moment that we're in, where we're transitioning out of a pandemic and thinking about how do businesses recover and rebound and be more resilient? And then it has a secondary goal of saying, well, it's not just about this moment, which is really important and critical, but it's also about planning for long-term strategies that can help businesses and help downtown at all moments in time. So kind of two-pronged initiative. It involves data collection, and what's interesting is it's standardized, so the state and municipalities all across the state, which we'll show you in a moment, we'll have comparable metrics, which means we can understand, how has North Brookfield performed when it comes to businesses doing well or not well in terms of the pandemic compared to other places. Where has it been harder? So that's really useful for the state, also useful for future grants. We're going to create what we're calling data-driven plans. So Abby's going to go through a lot of that data, and hopefully what that's going to lead to are some creative ideas and initiatives that can aid in recovery efforts for businesses. We're hoping it's opportunities also for participating communities to network and collaborate and share ideas, share resources, maybe be inspired by some solutions that others have come up with. We've conducted a business survey, and we'll share that with you, but it's been really helpful to hear directly from business owners, a group that was really, affected by the pandemic and can be hard to reach. And so we're lucky that some here and in other communities have participated, and we'll share a little bit of really the on-the-ground reporting about how things are looking right now. And then we'll also have not only today, but other future outreach opportunities, so we can hear from you, hear from residents, customers, visitors to the downtown and to downtown businesses. So like we said, this is a statewide initiative at the beginning, and there's 125 communities all across the state. Those that are colored in light blue are participating in the Rapid Recovery Plan. There's 52 communities that are classified as small, and North Brookfield is a small community. We're working agency with 3 different small communities, so it's nice. We can kind of compare and bring ideas across, and also kind of see what's working. That's a really big part of this, is cross-pollinating ideas across all of these different communities across the state. So you can see that there's a nice cluster in Central Mass. A lot of your neighboring communities also participating. So 52 small, 51 medium-sized, 15 large, and some extra large communities as well, all acknowledging that downtowns in different communities are really unique depending on scale, and so you need to have a custom approach to each place. This diagram is talking a little bit about kind of the structure of the program. So like we said, it's all kind of flowing out of the state, and thanks to Ethan and his team, volunteer team of dedicated thinkers about your city, they wrote an initiative, wrote a grant, and were able to participate and move forward. Ultimately, the state sends funding and technical assistance, which is us, Agency Landscape and Planning. We are planners and landscape architects, designers, and we are your technical assistants to help put this together. There's also subject matter experts, and you can see that on the bottom left, and they can be experts in anything, transportation systems, parking, design and landscape architecture, could be economic and kind of business marketing. So we're trying to determine right now what the key needs are of North Brookfield's downtown as it recovers. And then we'll have the opportunity, which is really exciting, to draw on different subject matter experts and try to get more ideas at the table, and more ideas that could work for North Brookfield. There's some things that this project will do and some things that it won't do. So we'll try to kind of make that clear. We are going to owe to the state, who's the kind of sponsoring entity, a set of actionable and well enough developed projects that it's really clear what next steps are to move them forward. And they really need to tie back to COVID recovery needs, to your community priorities. So that's why it's really important we're having this conversation tonight. They need to be realistic and attached to available resources and incentives, which could be future resources, future funding, grants. And we need to be able to demonstrate that they are implementable in terms of the capacity to do the work at the local level. We're also delivering to the state information on how to best allocate public and private resources in support of the recovery. So really focused, as you can see, on implementation, not just ideas, but how will they get done. And that means that North Brookfield, at the end of the day, will have a list of recommendations that are about stimulating business development. Could be everything from physical recommendations to, like I said, kind of branding or operational policy recommendations. We'll have a better understanding, we hope. We're creating a lot of data for you all, so you should have a better understanding of the current small business landscape within the study area. We expect that we'll have suggestions for public realm investments, for business support strategies, and for ways to build local capacity. And we'll illustrate some of those in different sketches and images and drawings of what downtown could look like in the future if those implementations can be realized. What it's not going to be are really detailed plans about specific sites or projects. So those would have to happen next. But we're thinking about this in a way as something that could support future grant funding to dig in deeper and move into more detailed design or more detailed studies. We're not doing in-depth economic development analyses, but we're staying pretty high level, and we'll show you what that looks like. Thanks, Abby. So overall, this is about 9 months, and we are into our 3rd month now. So we're going to wrap up in September. What happened in the earlier phases when Ethan and his team submitted applications to the state, we as technical assistants also submitted applications, and we were matched up to work with North Brookfield. I think in large part because of some of the assistance that we can bring around understanding the public realm and really working with downtowns. So what we're doing now is we're in the phase 1 diagnostic, and that's what we're going to be showing you tonight. And then we'll be moving into project recommendations and ultimately a plan. And there'll be other steps along that way where we come back to you and show you ideas. Okay, so I'll give a quick introduction of the team. I've been talking for most of this presentation, and my name is Bree Hensold. I'm a principal and a planner at Agency. I'm also a co-founder. We're a small landscape architecture and urban planning firm based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We do work both locally, regionally, and all across the country. So it's really fun. We love working in downtowns and are really excited to collaborate with you all. Abby's also on the screen waving hello. She's sort of the content manager for this project, so owning a lot of the research. I think if there's any questions about the data, understanding of the place, Abby is the owner and manager of all of those, all of that content right now. Mackenzie Wendling is our landscape designer, who's going to be, trying to think about how do some of these ideas for projects come to life in place in North Brookfield. And Rhiannon Sinclair, who you'll meet another time, is our project manager. We are all tied together and wouldn't be here without the support of Ethan, who is our representative and plan liaison and brought this initiative to life, as well as other dedicated residents and active citizens like Sheila Orsi and others who worked on the master plan committee and have really created a lot of good data already for us to work with. All right, Abby.
All right, thanks, Bree. So let's kick off and dive into some of the information that we've learned so far. So when we were asked as agency to come into North Brookfield and begin to mine for data, we were really centering our focus around main questions that the state had about these 4 topic areas. So the first being the customer base. Who visits North Brookfield's downtown? The second being the physical environment. How conducive is that downtown, is that physical nature for economic development and businesses? Third, stemming from that, what is the business environment like? And particularly and specifically, how has COVID-19 affected and impacted those businesses? And then finally, administrative capacity. Who are the local champions? Is there a downtown Main Streets organization, or are all the business owners acting more independently? So that is how we framed our questions and our search. When we went to look for data resources, we scoured the internet and reached out to a lot of local people at in North Brookfield who were really helpful in helping us gain the information that we needed. So from local residents, we received the assessor's database. We chatted with the town clerk. We had interviews with business owners and property owners. There was that business survey that Bree mentioned that was created and drafted by the state that was standardized across the state for business owners. Phone interviews. We have visited North Brookfield multiple times, and for the census, or for the demographic information, we looked at census databases and then also looked at statewide and regional mapping, which often has data included in that mapping. So diving into the questions. Who visits North Brookfield's downtown? First, let's take a moment and pause and just clarify what we mean when we're talking about the downtown. So initially, North Brookfield applied for this grant designating the downtown overlay district as the boundary. Once we visited and once we chatted more with business owners and local supporters, we thought that it was better to narrow the scope down slightly. So we are focusing along North Main Street, specifically because this is where the concentration of businesses downtown are. And also because this intersection at Summer Street, School, and North Main is really, it's really obvious when you enter the downtown right at that intersection. Because of the open space and the parks that exist near and around that downtown intersection, we also pulled the extended area up beyond School Street to the north of that boundary. And now it's time for our first interactive moment with y'all. So I'm gonna turn it back over to Bree and she'll run this first poll.
Okay, we're going to use this opportunity also to hear from you and have a couple of different polls as we go through the presentation. So as Abby said, here's our first one. And the question is, why do you go downtown? You'll be able to select more than one answer, and you're going to take this poll right in Zoom. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this now. Is everyone seeing the poll on their screen? I see one nod and yes, thank you. So here's your different choices. You might go downtown to shop at a business, to go to the grocery store, to receive a service, maybe get a haircut, doctor's appointment, insurance advice, to walk your dog, just get outside and it's a really nice place to be, to attend an event like movie night, which we'll be participating in soon. Maybe you don't go to downtown, you want to tell us that. You just kind of pass through, it's not a destination, or give us some of the other ideas and throw it in the chat. Okay, I'm going to give just a couple moments for people to think about it and answer, and you can click, you should be able to click more than one button too if you do a lot of things downtown. Go to church and the library, yep, use some of the civic anchors. Okay, we've got a little over half have responded, so I'll just give it another minute. Go to the playground, yeah, so it might be walking and using a specific park and amenity like the playground. Okay, I'm gonna end the polling. I think people have had a chance to answer and I'll share it. So looks like it's really popular that there's a grocery store there and important. So that's something for us to look at. And I would imagine that they did all right. They were one of the businesses that did all right during this as people were going to restaurants less, but still needing to eat. But that's something that we should look at and confirm. And then it looks like everybody here is a pretty devoted downtown user, so nobody's only passing through. That's really nice to see. A lot of people are going there for a specific reason. So this is great, really. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing and we'll keep going and we'll circle back to a few more questions in a little bit.
Great, thanks everyone. This is really helpful.
Just a quick note, you might have to close the poll on your screen to get it out of the way, but when I relaunch it, it'll come back.
Great. And then so beginning to dig even further down into that question of who visits downtown, we began to look at a whole wide range of demographic information. So that study area was that specific hatched boundary in the previous map. North Brookfield town is obviously the town of North Brookfield. And then just for some comparisons, we did use the state, although we know that that's not super accurate with the town of North Brookfield. It's always good just to have that as comparison. So within the study area, we do see that the median age is slightly lower than the rest of the town, and there's a slightly greater average household size, which would make sense if that's where the higher buildings are. When we look at total workforce, while this number may initially be startling compared to North Brookfield town, it is more of what we expect for these downtown areas, specifically in regards to total workforce and employees. So we often see that these downtown areas have less residential and have less total employees in the downtown. But again, this is helpful to compare with the town itself and the state, just to begin to get an idea for who the customers are that are coming into this space. Looking again one level deeper, we used this database called Esri Tapestry. And this Esri Tapestry database is one of the leaders in essentially collecting a whole bunch of information. So this organization, Esri, collects market information, demographic information, transportation, tons and tons and tons of stuff. And one of the services that it provides is to come up with these basic customer or consumer characteristics. We know that this is, of course, only one way to look at who exists and shops and lives in a community, but it's a starting point. And one of the questions we are going to be asking you in just a moment is, if these consumer profiles that Esri gave us feel correct. So there were 3 main consumer profiles that came through for North Brookfield. The largest one was Green Acres. This consumer group has a median age of 44. It's predominantly married couples with no children, and these couples enjoy outdoor living, gardening, and lots of outdoor recreation. The next most common was the Park and Rec group, so slightly younger with a median age of 41, also predominantly married couples approaching retirement, and they often are also like to visit local parks and be outside, so quite similar. And then the third most common consumer group was called front porchers. And so this group is slightly younger, so it tends to be younger families or single households with a median age of 35, and more than half are renters. What was really interesting was that between all 3 of these consumer groups, we saw that there was a lot of budget conscious activities, cautious spending, and really wanting to analyze prices before big decisions were made. One other point to note is that the Park and Rec group and the Front Porches group all spend less than the national average on food, apparel and services, and entertainment and recreation, which are often things that we may assume or associate with the downtown. I know there's a lot to read on that slide. So now that we've talked through it, your first initial...
I'm just going to pop into that too, because there was a question in the chat.
Oh, sure.
So Sheila was asking, you know, on one, the Green Acres with no children, does that mean empty nesters or, you know, people who chose to never have children? And I think, you know, just to say all of these are kind of fun market profiles that lump together a lot of statistics. So it's kind of like at a moment in time there, that group Green Acres, you know, has no kids in the house and so has more kind of free time for hobbies and things like that. You know, the hunting and fishing and things like that. So it's they're kind of fun. It's not going to be a perfect fit for everyone, and you probably might look at it and say, oh, I don't, you know, I look like a Park and Rec, but I don't, you know, I don't stock up on staples or whatever. I do something different. And so it's never going to be a perfect fit, but we had a little fun in the office too, trying to identify ourselves and found some relevance and usefulness. So it's kind of an interesting tool to think about.
And Sheila, for your second question, what do those groups spend more on if they spend less on these other things? These 2 particular groups of Park and Rec and Front Porchers spend less on all of the metrics overall. So just compared to the US, they just spend less. And there was maybe an additional 6 other categories that included things like pensions and education and transportation, as an example. All right, so time for our second poll.
Okay, so we're all warmed up. So now you get to tell us what you think of that, right? Do those profiles that we just showed that, you know, the census and kind of data things line up with the North Brookfield area around downtown? Feel like it describes people to you? So tell us if we got this right. I'm just going to launch this poll. And you're going to have the option to say, I strongly agree. Yes, that looks pretty spot on. I know a lot of folks like that. I strongly disagree. There's, you know, this doesn't cover what I think people are shopping for, spending money on, or yeah, maybe it's kind of right in the middle. So we'll give people just a moment. It's like almost half have voted. So we'll give just another couple minutes. And if you have ideas about why or why not too, you could write that in the chat. Okay, so almost everyone's responded. I'm going to go ahead and stop the poll and share it back. So the consensus is this isn't perfect. Market science isn't perfect. Nobody is cookie cutter, right? So I think that's really fair. It looks like one person really disagrees and thinks it's off. Another one person disagrees, but most people are kind of hanging out in the, maybe there's some general usefulness to this, and yeah, I can kind of see some of these traits or some of the characteristics lining up. So that's really helpful for us to see too, and kind of test data, right, with perceptions. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing that and we'll keep going.
Great, thanks, Bree.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on to question number 2. Is the physical environment conducive to businesses and customers? So again, we did another big, long, deep dive. And so what we found initially, essentially our first impressions, was that when we visited North Main Street, the sides of the street feel quite separate. So we have one that has most of the commercial uses and another that has churches, housing, public safety facilities. Not to say that that is a good or a bad thing, and we do know that there's a new gas station coming in, so that will change, but that was just something that was our initial impression. We know that pedestrian activity in most communities has increased during COVID-19, and we found the same thing for North Brookfield, which would be a great opportunity. And we found that the open spaces are really wonderful, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit, but they're located quite close to the central downtown. In terms of the amount of vehicles per day that come in and around the main street, we have just over 3,500 on the secondary street, and then almost double that on the main street. There's about 5 acres or over 5 acres of open space and more than 500 parking spaces, which my partner counted all of them. So that was a fun task when we went. There's a lot of really wonderful, again, things downtown in the physical environment, historic buildings, large commercial assets, a faith presence. There we go. But alas, we did have to assign grades. So these grades came from a state-created rubric where you could score from A to C or fail. And so there were different descriptions for each of the elements, for an A, for a B, a C, and a fail. We also received, as consultants, trainings on this rubric, so that way we were trying to standardize them as much as possible and take out some of the subjective nature of them. So while we see that the commercial district could definitely use some upgradings, we know that this is a really wonderful place for us to start. And downtown has a lot to love. There are historical facades that we know residents and community members are very passionate about. There's a lot of parking, as we noticed. There's really great visibility. And while we are looking to upgrade the crosswalks, they exist and people can see them, and they are quite centrally located. But on that note, of course, there's always room for improvement. We found a lack of street trees and greenery, specifically benches for people to sit. They seem to be clustered in one area, not as widespread. Downtown, while you know when you enter it, it does lack a little bit of a sense of arrival. And there didn't seem to be a lot of infrastructure for ADA accessibility. That's just a note. We did want to call out that we know that North Brookfield is putting in place a complete streets project. Complete streets extend ADA accessibility. They allow for multiple modes of transportation. So it's not just cars, it's bikes, it's pedestrian traffic. And they aim to design streets for all ages and abilities. So in this architectural drawing, we see that there will be trees, the curbs will be extended, and again, all of this is wonderful and we fully support. And so we know that some of the previous rubric grades are going to change. And final part of this section, again, just calling back to the parks. We know that there is the town common up here, and then that the church has a really wonderful green lawn that makes a lot of downtown feel like downtown. And again, what's really wonderful is that these two areas are located within a 5-minute walk from each other. So if they're used a little bit more strategically, they could help to channel people in and around the downtown area. Okay, next poll time. Bree, it's your turn.
Ready. So now we want to understand, Abby just showed you kind of what exists downtown now in terms of public realm infrastructure to support just being there, to support the businesses and the kind of sense of place. So now let's understand from you what's missing. What do you wish downtown had more of? Gonna pull up this poll. And that should have launched for you now, and you can tell us any of these or more than one. You can click more than one. Do you want to see more places to relax and sit, more gathering spaces for larger events like movie night, like the farmer's market? Do you need more shade? Do you just need more comfortable places to walk? Do you want to see North Brookfield's kind of identity really amplified, sense of place? I see Sue calling it charm. Maybe that's what we think of. Can we play up the charm and really think about a distinctive look and feel? Do we need support for nighttime activities, which could be lighting, you know, really better wayfinding about where do you park at night and things like that. So what else do you need for those nighttime evening activities after dinner, or any other ideas? It looks like we've got 3/4 of people voted, so I'll give people just another minute in case people have last minute ideas. This is really great to see. More safe places for teens to hang out. Yeah, that's a really good idea. And if you have ideas about what that could look like too, which coffee shops fill that gap. I know teens love coffee shops. That's a good idea. Someplace that it doesn't cost a lot to be, right? That you know, maybe it's a couple dollars for a coffee, or even someplace that you could be for free. All right, I'm gonna end the polling and show you what everyone said. Share the results. So, wow, this is interesting. People really wanna amplify and play up the sense of place, North Brookfield's uniqueness. And I would love to talk in our discussion a little bit more about how you could imagine that could be. Are there special properties or art emblems? What would that look like? Also a call for more places to gather for some of those larger events. People really like to be together. You can imagine after the last year, there's a real craving to be outside, hanging out and celebrating with your neighbors. Places to just relax, which could be just a relaxing walk or sitting. Support for those evening events. And then we heard a lot of good ideas in the chat, so I'm just gonna read those out. Soda bars, coffee shops, places for teens, using the townhouse office space and activities, using spaces that you already have, and thinking about how those could be opened up to the community. And I love this idea of charm. Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks Bree. Thanks everyone. Okay, moving on. Does the business mix meet the needs of consumers or customers? And so that's asking about what types of businesses are downtown and are they serving the community? So what we found was that despite a concentration of businesses on North Main Street, it does feel a little sleepy. There are at least 38 businesses along Main Street in and around that study area, which feels like a lot. And while there are vacant tenant locations, which we would expect with COVID-19, it is a little difficult being that those tenancies or those vacant tenancies, excuse me, are in prime locations. And so if they're on the ground floor of downtown, it may look like one vacant storefront feels like a much larger missing piece in the puzzle of downtown itself. And then when we actually crunch the numbers to the best of our ability, we found that 9.5, so almost 10% of the commercial space in downtown is vacant. And then when we reached out and spoke to our business owners and leaders specifically, we found more information about, of course, specifically how COVID has affected them. We do want to call out that only 13 businesses participated. And so we believe that this is 34% of overall businesses. So not just the ones in our hatched smaller boundary that are within downtown. And so some of the takeaways and the findings are exactly what we expected, which is that COVID was hard for businesses. They saw a decrease in revenue. This last bullet point here, that almost half of businesses saw revenue decline by 25% is definitely big. We saw that safety measures, while they were helpful and were allowed businesses to remain open, they were expensive. About, again, half of businesses said that that cost them money. Some businesses did see profits or revenue increase, about 15%. About 8% stayed the same. And 8% of businesses were able to pivot in some way. So either they could deliver their products or reach people through apps or something like that. That's not a super high number, so we would be interested to look into why or why not that was able to happen. And then again, effects were substantial. So the last bullet point here, 69% of businesses reduced hours and capacity, and 23% had to lay off employees. Again, that's a really, really big number. The survey also asked our business owners how satisfied they are with particular elements of the public realm. So we see here that public spaces, streets and sidewalks are the things that people are the most dissatisfied with. And then there was more neutrality, but moving up towards somewhat satisfaction with proximity to complementary businesses and safety for customers and employees. I know that there's a lot to read on this slide as well, but we wanted to compare all of the metrics that the business survey asked business owners to rate in terms of what was really important for them and what was not so important. So not so important changes to zoning and regulations. In some ways, that's great. It means that the system is working for people. Creating a district management entity like a business improvement district is not something that seems like it's a helpful strategy here. So again, okay, that's great to know. And in terms of very important, improving safety and cleanliness, the street and the sidewalks, right? We're starting to see this pattern here of what our business owners want to see. Some cultural events, and there was also a desire for more marketing and recruitment strategies to bring in new businesses to the downtown. Okay, so not another poll, but we do have another moment to hear from you all, so I will pass it on over to Bree.
Yeah, so we want you to use your chat box, which many of you have already been doing, and I think Jack unknowingly has already answered this question for us, so that's great with his idea. So he gives a little tip of what he thinks. You can second that or add your own. When you think of downtown, what words come to mind? So this could be a description, or it could be like Jack's done, you know, noting some key features. Potential, yes. I think what's so interesting too about the responses that Abby just showed on that survey bar, people are really clear about what is working and what needs work, right? Because they're saying some things are low priority, it seems to be working pretty well, and that's where that potential comes in. A place for the community to come together, dreary and incomplete, needs charm. Yeah, seconding that let's be honest and direct, you know, that it's not perfect. That's why we're here to talk about it, because we care about it and want to make sure it thrives and is a really great place, lives up to that potential. that I think Sonia is either saying, you know, in many ways it's an active area where businesses may thrive, or that's the dream for the future. In the future, you describe it that way. Upgrade the sidewalks and streetscape for walkability, need for human services. Great. Well, you can keep those coming. And we're going to just kind of continue through the rest of the presentation and then move into open discussion together too. But if you think of other ideas, just add them to the chat.
Great. Okay, and we're going to allow for you to take a break from hearing me talk, and I'm going to pass it back on over to Bree for the next few slides.
Okay, so as we wrap up, we're just going to talk a little bit about that final category that the state is interested in us thinking about, and that's really important for implementation, this idea of capacity and kind of administrative support. And beyond thinking of that just as the city or formal support, we want to know who are the champions and the stewards of downtown that can make this a success. So this is our kind of diagram or understanding of who those champions might be today. There's a lot of people volunteering their time, and on the left in blue, you see these kind of residents and customers who are champions. I think many of you have showed up tonight. Property owners we might be missing, but those are champions. I know we've got property owners here tonight. And then these kind of councils, commissions, friends groups that really organize and advocate and have a big role for making things like this grant happen, or making other initiatives take place. The Cultural Council, Conservation, Historical Commission, Downtown Development Committee. So all of those sort of organizational groups. And then there's on the right, what you could think of as more sort of administrative, formal, kind of could be regional or local groups that we need the support of, and that can be champions and stewards in different ways. So that could be the Chamber of Commerce, the Regional Planning Commission, state programs like we're participating in, and the town of North Brookfield, some of the kind of more formal processes like the master plan. Downtown really is a big part of kind of making a bigger citywide plan happen, and the role of the board of selectmen. So that's kind of our brainstorm. And if you have ideas, you can write that into the chat about things we might be missing. I think the ideas in the chat are still for the last question, which is great. We want those to keep coming. Any groups, individuals, entities that we might be missing? Marketing and events, that could be a group too. That could be, oftentimes there's a group in charge of running events, so we could talk about that. All right, you can keep ideas coming, and we'll go ahead to the next one. Okay, so we can now just sort of move into a broader discussion. We want to understand kind of if we missed anything in the data analysis that feels important, if anything stood out that is surprising to you, if there's anything that feels right on, good to have that confirmed too. I know Sheila said, whoa, hard to believe that there's over 500 parking spaces. So yeah, sometimes it's really interesting to see the kind of facts laid out that you don't experience on a day-to-day basis. So we'd love to hear those, and then we have some really specific questions too that we can talk about. But first, I think we'll just kind of pause and open it up. Any questions or general comments? A business coalition. I'm just flashing back to the chat. Good idea. And if you want to weigh in, you can just go ahead and unmute. Anybody have some ideas?
I'm just confused about your last question. Like,
Yeah.
Are you asking like programs that are in place now, or things that you think that we could develop for the future?
I think both answers are useful. I think the first kind of real official part of the question was, are we missing anything that exists today? But then I think it's actually probably even more useful to hear what you think would be helpful for the future. So we'll take both answers, but just helpful if people could specify. Did you have some thoughts on that?
I mean, for me, like my biggest issue is social justice issues. And I think that one of the reasons why we scare away consumers and people, and even a lot of business owners from our town is we have a really hard time with social justice issues in our town. And I think that scares a lot of people away.
Yeah, so maybe there's a group that could think about a strategy for the town, or some coalescing and some thoughtfulness around that. Yeah.
So can I just jump in there and say, Tashina, I'm ignorant to that. What exactly do you mean by that? Because it seems kind of vague to me. Can you be a little bit more specific? Because we really want to work on stuff like that and make sure that we target, you know, what citizens think might be something that needs to be targeted. So can you help me out with that?
Yeah, happily to. So I'm part of the Rural Justice Network. And so over the last 6 months, year, since I've been part of the committee, we have reached out to a lot of other rural committees and kind of just like, we're just a listening board. We haven't really established ourselves officially, so we haven't really done any official statistics, but it is something we're interested in working on doing. And we have found that a lot of problems with people who want to open businesses in small towns, like who are not like, you know, like I would like to move to a small town with my family, but I am afraid because there's not a big community of either like even when you're talking about like deaf people and not just like the people of color community, like there's not a community of people, like we don't even have subtitles on stuff in our meetings. So like when they're talking about running a business and there's a lot of red tape for them, they're like, how can I go to a selectman meeting when we can't understand each other to ask for permits for downtown? And I've actually even heard at meetings people who were like talked down to, who had requested alternate material and asked for subtitles or someone to help sign. So like things like that like are going to scare away anyone who is in a minority, who is a minority, for whether they're a person of color or they have a disability. And then two, people who are their allies also don't want to come to a place where they think it's a hostile environment as well. And so even though a lot of these people who are in the cities and want to experience and want to think about moving to a small town America, they're held back by the fear of being put down or not having accommodations.
Sheena, that's interesting. I never thought of it that way. And I know we are working on like at least ADA compliancy for our sidewalks and stuff with regards to complete streets, which is awesome. But I honestly have never even thought of something like that. So that's really an interesting topic. I appreciate you bringing that to the table.
Yeah, most people don't, because one, like small towns, like even if they wanted to, a lot of times we can't afford it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting idea to bring up, because you're talking also about perceptions, right? But perceptions that are based on a lot of people's lived experiences. And then how do you tackle that at a small town scale? Or is it, like you're saying, more of a regional coalition that could provide some different types of support?
Yeah, and you know, like one of the things that we're looking on finding statistics for is like, what is your perception on it, and then what have you actually experienced? Because you know, I think that it's one of those things, like, are people just afraid, or is there like some real value to it?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for bringing that up. And my first thought too is that of course directly goes into how people feel in space, how they feel downtown, where they feel they can and can't go. And I'm sure that, you know, we all are looking for spaces to be as warm and welcoming as possible. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
I can say I'm very interested in anybody else who wants to chime in on what kind of businesses that the district should attract.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very interesting question for me, because we do have, I think, I know you guys had 4 vacancies, but I think that there might be a little bit more than 4 vacancies down there. So I'm interested in that, because in a non-biased way, like what really would work. I know that some of the landlords down there have talked about adding in another laundromat or some other facilities. And it's interesting to see that different businesses will attract different types of people as well. And do we already have those, you know, economic differences in our town already that would benefit? I don't know.
So oh, no, someone else, please go ahead.
Yeah, Sue had her hand up, I think.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I would like to see is we have no social services in town. We have no doctors, no social services. So if we had a business that came in that maybe had, you know, some therapists, more medical, we could have them reach out more to the town to help with the social justice
Yeah.
area. And because we have a lot of domestic violence in town. I'm on a domestic violence task force. We have a lot of addiction in town. We have one AA meeting, I think, in town. And we need to have a safe and comfortable place for these people to go that do not have transportation. And if we can help some of the people help themselves, you know, a lot of this other stuff, because I'm in recovery, I've been in recovery for a long time, but people in recovery are the ones that will go out and clean up the towns. They'll, you know, and I'm working with the police department and Green Gold to possibly put together some programs in town that will help catch people before they get addicted, you know, through the school system and give them some alternative plans. So having social services in town would be huge. You know, I think anyway, and medical professionals and a dentist, you know.
Oh man, that sounds great. Oh, I'm not muted. I'm sorry.
And then on the side, a really good consignment shop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yep.
Lots of
Good
folks
idea.
seconding that, I see.
Mhm.
But yeah, I heard a lot of good ideas in there and important ideas. I think, you know, ways that you can meet your daily needs, which are often multifaceted, right? Health or service related, as well as community related, and then some of the kind of, you know, sustainable businesses. So those are great ideas.
I have an idea about the, you know, I'm getting off of the social justice in a way, but I'm thinking about things that people can do to help the town. I find that capacity building is an important thing in trying to make things happen, whether we maybe we don't advertise in the right way or invite people to be a part of organizations that are really trying to do things for the town. But I feel like we get stopped often because we don't have enough capacity to get the jobs done that we would like to see done in our town. And I think, I'm on base with Sue with her ideas and Tashina and with the way that she feels about, I think, inclusion, this inclusive sense for our entire town is very important, because when you're in a small town, if there's a division or there's a feeling that you're not part of the group, that's very harmful because it's obvious right away.
Yeah. Wow, that's a really good point.
Can I ask you ladies, I'm sorry, Marilyn. We do this to each other all the time.
Let's do
I know
Carolyn and then we'll come back to Sheila if that's okay.
that's fine.
Okay, perfect.
I was just saying that sometimes people feel a little shut out, that one person kind of organizes something and wants to do it all. And so we do need that togetherness. We do need that that give and take.
Communication.
Yes, the communication and the idea that if you have an idea, you can expand it to include a lot of people to help out. I think that makes a community too.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I think, a lot of times in grassroots initiatives, like you're saying, get done just through initiative and enthusiasm and ideas. And then, but there's some really interesting examples of kind of like resident training for kind of just about planning, right? So how just making it clear and that people are welcome to engage in these initiatives too and invited to. So we could think about some programs like that. Sheila.
So one of the questions that I have, maybe for you ladies, and I don't know if this is just a discussion to just talk about, is one of the things that I thought was very interesting was the traffic of customers that we have in North Brookfield, in our downtown area. And maybe you had a better idea of that on one of the slides that you had. But do we have a sense as to the difference between people who are living or in North Brookfield that are going to the businesses in the downtown area versus people who are coming from outside of North Brookfield? And kind of just jump off of what Eva was saying a little bit is that we do have a limited amount of humans in North Brookfield. So to bring more businesses in, we would need to tap into people outside of our area, even if it's just like out into the Brookfields to come to our town to bring business here. I guess what is there a spot at some point, Bree, that your group might give us some kind of feedback as to what businesses would be more attracted? Oh, Betsy's got her hand up because I know she gets people outside of NB. So I'm very interested in this conversation.
Oh, awesome. Well, let's let Betsy answer first, and then maybe Abby can reflect on the data and I can weigh in too.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Well, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So my business is in downtown, right? It's been there for 98 years. So I think we are probably the oldest business in North Brookfield on North Main Street. And what I find to be probably the biggest issue with traffic is that it's comprised right now mostly of delivery trucks. We've got delivery to the liquor store. We've got delivery to Cumberland Farms. There doesn't seem to be a great traffic pattern. For us, having a business in town, what happens is they will block our driveway or block our spaces and stuff like that. So that has to be an issue that I would love to have addressed. I think that the town has tried in various ways. They put up a sign for us and stuff like that, but they're not observed. They're not observed. So there has to be somewhat of a traffic pattern that where trucks can go separate from where the consumer goes. I think that's very important. I think the other thing I notice, or in talking with all of you, is that businesses that come into town would have to have not only sustainability, but support. And I've talked to Eva about this, I believe, in a previous phone conversation, is we've been there for a long time. So I'm not saying that that's an issue, but I can say that if there are times when it's important to shop local. And if you find it cheaper somewhere else, maybe online or something along those lines, you have to stop and ask yourself, if this is what I want for my community, that shops will come here and they will be sustainable, then we have to agree to support them. And I think that's another very important issue. I know my business is insurance. People need it, they don't necessarily want it. So I think they try to find the cheapest solution. But I think whoever comes into town is taking a big risk, and we need to let them know that we will support them and that we will shop local. I do think that's probably one of the most important messages we can get across.
Betsy, can I ask you, I know you said that you've been there almost, probably, like you said, the longest business that's been in the downtown. Do you have a guesstimation as to the percentage of North Brookfield customers you have as compared to people outside of North Brookfield?
I truthfully, I could do that for you, Sue. I think, we have way over, I think I probably have somewhere in the range of 2,000 and some odd customers. I could say that it was probably divided equally throughout the Brookfields. And then we have so many people that support us from all over the state, quite frankly. But I could probably do that. I've just never really asked my management system to break it out by town.
Sure, I don't know that I'm actually asking you to do that. I didn't know if you had a guesstimation. You're like, yeah, I got like, 20% of my clients or 10%, 5%, but that's okay. I was just curious.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I guess because we've delved out so much beyond North Brookfield that I've not given that a whole lot of thought.
Those are, oh yeah, sorry, I'm gonna organize just 1 second. I know Tashina raised their hand, maybe Marilyn first, and then we'll go to Tashina. That's okay. I know Tashina also has her hands full and up.
I was wondering, how do we find out the names or the addresses or whatever of the people who are interested in coming into North Brookfield and setting up a business? We would be glad as members of the Downtown Development Committee to talk to those people. And Sheila's been doing a wonderful job of highlighting businesses and perhaps even businesses that would be coming into town. So how do we find out about that?
I don't know how those conversations happen today. Does anyone on this call know or participate in those? Like inquiries, sometimes people are looking for space. So it could be, real estate brokers would be at the front line of those inquiries. Maybe it's kind of a network that makes sure that, that person is really tapped in. And that's become really decentralized too with the internet, which can be hard. Good question. We'll keep thinking on that, and let's hear from Tashina too.
I just wanted to say, as far as like being a parent goes, when I look at communities to spend the day in, which I'm a millennial, and I hang out with millennials and Gen Zers, and not to group us too much into one thing, but a lot of us, we have kids, we don't really want to spend a ton of money. We're like definitely shifting our mindset to like buying video games and Xboxes and stuff, especially as parents, to like a more minimal lifestyle and more local. And a lot of us will look to take our kids out on daycations in the area, and so we'll look for a place that has a park, that has a playground, that has a quiet, safe place to bring our kids, and that's a safe location. And then while we're there, we'll stop at the local pizza place. We'll stop at the local coffee shop and buy our kids a donut. We'll go into the cute little gift store and let our kids pick out something, because it's a cheap trip compared to like bringing your kids somewhere like super expensive. It's more affordable for my generation who has like almost nothing. And it definitely aligns with our morals and our values, which is like trying to shop more local and use less. And North Brookfield like almost has that, but it's like, it's so close, but it's so far, it's a little bit, it's just not quite there yet.
That's super interesting though, because it connected the dots between a lot of the different pieces we were talking about earlier. I think I was thinking about, I think it was what Betsy said with how do you get people to go to a downtown instead of online, and that comes back to the charm idea. But I think what you said too connects to that. People need a place to just be, especially safe for kids, something to do. And so thinking about it as a destination for people who are looking for that too makes a lot of sense, and that would combat the online. Yes, I forget, there was like a simultaneous hand up. Can we do Sue and then Marilyn?
To me, two of the key things that need to get completed is the townhouse and the playground, not the playground, the town common, the way that the plans are. Because the townhouse, when it's done, will bring people from all over to town. So you'll get the people from outside of town, and when the common is done the way the plans have been drawn up, and of course it's going to cost a lot of money, but the kids will go down there. So you'll have people that might come for a sporting event downtown and then go to the townhouse for an artistic thing, and then they're going to want to eat, and they might want to go in a little consignment store, so those two things are huge that we get done. I'll write a check, Marilyn. Won't be enough, but.
No, it's a really good point. Those would both meet a lot of check a lot of the boxes. Marilyn, and then is it Eva?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Marilyn, and then we'll come to you, Eva. Sorry.
Okay.
We have been eager to get the Town Common project off the ground, but that is dependent on the plan, the town plan and the open space plan. So that has been holding us up, but that would be a wonderful resource for the town, not just for the moms and dads with younger children, but also for the sports teams and for the senior citizens, because we were considering a senior citizen exercise area in that as well. So that would make a big difference. We really have to get that moving, and we should after the open space plan and the town plan are completed.
Yeah. As a planner, I'm glad you're, waiting and making sure all the pieces line up, but also you want to get that going. So that's good to hear.
Bree, and I don't mean to interrupt Eva. I know she's jumping in, but one of the reasons why Marilyn is mentioning that is because we need the master plan and an open space updated in order to apply for a lot of our grants.
Yes.
Because it's expired. So I don't know so much that they're waiting patiently. I'll tell you that.
Understandable. And also, I think a lot of this project is meant to help and tee up and move any grant opportunities forward too. So that's good that you have projects already kind of lined up and thought about. But who is waiting patiently is Eva. So
I hope I can remember what I was going to say. I think that one of the main questions we have to ask about that downtown area is, do we want it to be a destination, or do we want it to be a downtown that's a pass-through area? I think about the gas station as being very important to the town. Everybody wants it. But I also look at one of the buildings that will be torn down, and I say, wouldn't that be a great indoor play area for young children and young families? And I think that the idea of when you're developing your downtown, if we had a unified vision of what we wanted to see down there, and I think that's what I'm grateful for what you're doing, because it may bring us to that place where we have a unified vision. Because the townhouse, for example, is an historical building that can be used for so many mixed use purposes. So we can have businesses in there, we can have entertainment, we could have a type of restaurant downstairs. And I know Nader is also in his Adams block is thinking about a restaurant. It could become a place that we wanted to go to. And I think that's key to this whole area. Be excited about going downtown. There's something for you. It may be a drink at the nature bar or something, but it's just, we want to be downtown. And right now I feel we go to open spaces, but we don't really go to downtown that much as a community. And that's where we'd meet our friends, which I'd love. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you said something else important in there too, that, having the two updated plans and then this framework will hopefully let you make decisions that feel like they're in support of that bigger vision, and, that you've understood and thought about as a community.
One thing that I wanted to mention, excuse me, is and I think a lot of people have sort of come up with all these things that really tie together, and in my opinion, and it's, to a certain extent, it's a little bit of a surface level thing, but aesthetics really matter. And how the town looks, on the one hand, you need the businesses to make people come to the town. On the other hand, you need the town to look good to make the businesses come in the first place. So I think the idea that everybody's sort of talking about is how we need a place to feel comfortable from sort of every vantage, whether it's from, just literally physical, have a place to sit, or whether it's mentally comfortable. Is it somewhere that you feel safe? And I think all of that can really sort of be rolled into and come about if the area is presented well, and if there are amenities, even tiny amenities that are helpful to both traffic and people's sort of general well-being. I think that, for me at least, that's always sort of like my first starting point. It's like, well, if the place is ugly, why am I going to go there? I don't, it doesn't matter if it's the greatest restaurant. If it's in, if I don't want to walk around the spot, then I'm not going to go there. And so
Right.
that's always been a big point for me.
Yeah.
We did have a request from Nader to jump in. So if you would like to respond to that, to Ethan's comment.
Okay,
Great.
hi guys, this is Nader again. One of the things that I keep hearing about this, first of all, I think this is a great forum and I'm really enjoying all the comments and what's going on in downtown. One thing that I would say that we are continuously talking about, how do we get other people to come to North Brookfield? How do we make it a destination? You know what, that's a great thing, but at the same time, how do we make the North Brookfield community happy about where they are, right? So I think just the people that live in North Brookfield can take advantage of some other new things that we can provide, right? So as a couple of people mentioned, there's no restaurant, there's no really coffee shop. There's not a place that you can go sit down and have a cup of coffee, be on Wi-Fi, and just have a community, right? So we don't need people from other cities to come, just for North Brookfield itself, right? So I think that's what we need to focus on, and pandemic really hurt us a little bit, because when I purchased Adam Block and then I recently 195 North Main Street, I had a vision that I was going to do different businesses in Adam Block, and I was at a mission to do a few other things. But unfortunately, because of the pandemic, it sort of put us back a little bit. Now that the things are opening up and things happening, we will focus on trying to get other business to come in. Hopefully a restaurant, a coffee shop, maybe a dance studio, something different, right? Again, I think that we are on the right path and things are going well, but I think we should focus on the people within North Brookfield versus bringing people from outside of the town, right? I think once the people in North Brookfield have a destination to go to, then other towns will also come.
Mm-hmm.
Nader, I can't agree with you more. I think you're definitely right on point. And that was kind of my point in asking, like Betsy, like how many people actually do you have in North Brookfield? Because shouldn't the businesses in North Brookfield be concentrating on North Brookfield? If you get people from town to come in, you're going to get people from outside of town to come eventually, because they're going to talk to their friends. Mm-hmm. So make it a place that people here love, and they're gonna stay here. They're not gonna go outside. They're not gonna go to Worcester. They're not gonna go out to West Brookfield to the tavern. They're not gonna go to East Brookfield to 308. They're gonna stay right here in North Brookfield. So I can't agree with you more. That was a great post.
Yeah.
I was gonna say exactly the same thing. The coffee shop, the restaurants, places to eat. And Ethan's point that we lost some trees in the downtown area. I mean, we had some small trees replacing, but that makes a huge difference. So reestablishing a tree-lined streets will make it a beautiful place to enjoy walking, and having the places, the ethnic foods that would bring people, it would introduce people to different types of food. Also, the dance studio that Nader mentioned, I see for a community you see some communities that have traditions where they're like maybe an Irish step dancing or something like that, where there's some activity that community could be proud of and have a program once a year or so. I think that there's a lot of great ideas that if they come to fruition, that could make a big difference in that downtown.
I think again, this is Nader again, but I think what North Brookfield has that many towns lack is a community that wants to make this city different, right? Wants to make this city happy, wants to make a destination of their own city, right? Everybody I talked to since I started doing business in North Brookfield, which is last February, was like, how do we make this city better? How many cities or towns do you go to that people say that, right? So I think the good news is that everybody's on the same page, that want to make this a destination place, want to make this different. So we just have to talk about it, make sure that we can bring it, and make sure that the city helps the businesses to be successful without making it difficult for the businesses to be successful. The city needs to make sure, you know, again, I don't mean to say anything out of place or be difficult here, but you know, the town hall needs to finish. The town hall needs to be complete. You know, again, I bought Adam Block last February, right? And I haven't seen much changes, right? So it's time for town hall to finish, to be complete, for the businesses around it to also be complete. Again, I don't think that I'm gonna win any popularity contest by saying that, but I think it should finish.
Well, we're working on it, Nader, and we only need $10 million.
Let me check this. Yeah, I might have that in my pocket. Hold on.
Oh, if you do, let us know, because we're really working at that. I'm writing a grant right now for the townhouse, and we're hoping to get this. And but we're in competition with other people, so we have a long road ahead. But we're working on it. And if you know anybody who has the desire to give us money, I'm going to be happy to talk to you.
Again, I did say that I wasn't going to win a popularity contest by making that point, but
oh no, oh no, no, that's a good point.
We're on the same page. You are popular.
Oh.
This is really great. I mean, it does seem like people in general are very much on the same page, I think, about both values of inclusion and supporting the community, and also some of the catalysts and initiatives and, you know, sense of place, character, charm. Anything? I'm gonna look over here. We've had such a good conversation. I've been ignoring my questions, but I feel like we've covered actually really more important topics. We've talked about improvements to access in the public realm. I wanted to note I was really grateful for the comments about the truck traffic too, and the delivery. I could see that as a really concrete thing to look at, and we can get a, you know, as we engage subject matter experts, that could be something that we dig into. Sometimes you can manage that in terms of times of day too, work with deliveries so that they don't happen during daytime or they happen before peak hours, and that can make a really big difference.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So, have you done any study or have like any information or like feels about like how big businesses like Hannaford's and the Dollar General and like bigger businesses like that like have an impact on smaller businesses? Because like, I mean, thinking about back like when, so I'm part of the DuPel family, and they used to have like a little shop in the center of town, and there was a bunch of little shops. There's a baker, there was a meat, you know, and I feel, and it was full downtown. And even like we had the donut shop and the coffee shop, and they had like a little convenience store growing up. And I feel like a lot of our problem is like with the, you know, I know we want business, but I think we have to be careful of allowing big businesses to come in. And then I think that it doesn't allow for multiple smaller businesses to come in. And then you end up with a vacant downtown and like 2 or 3 area. But I don't really know if that's statistically sound information or if that's just my own feelings.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think you're right that the right mix of businesses is really important. And sometimes those bigger destination businesses can help, right? Because they're a draw. Like a grocery store, they're a draw, and people are going to go there, and so there can be spillover effects that are really good for other retail. And then sometimes, like you said, there's a negative effect too, and so it is kind of about the mix. So that's something we could dig into a little bit more too. I think that's a really good question, and a lot of what you mentioned
I
too.
just stopped my screen share for one moment because Sheila, I want to look up something to answer your question, or to hopefully guide us down that track. So I know that you are asking about the amount of local business that there is compared to non-local business. And while that was not exactly a question that was asked by the survey, I personally found it somewhat telling if we look at the mix of businesses that there are downtown. I know that in particular, the master plan, their survey results found that people are really interested in a bakery, which I know that we keep hearing about, in smaller scale retail, and some of these other things that keep surfacing. But as I pull this up to get the exact numbers, what was interesting from the data collection as well was, to Sue's previous point, was that when we did our analysis, we found that there was more services than we initially may have thought, and that there was about 25% of businesses downtown were some sort of services, not exactly social services, and that about 10% were healthcare. And I think that that has to do, or could do, with the fact that those offices are off the ground floor, and maybe there just are not enough for the amount of people that they are. That's super valid to hear. And then regarding restaurants and places to eat, that was about 8% of our businesses. Retail trade was also about 8%. And so when you're just thinking about answering that question of who comes here and why, I think that breakdown is really important to look at. And maybe there are places where we either want to extend or decrease the pieces of the pie, either to stimulate more local customers or to stimulate more coming from outside areas. So hopefully that helped a bit.
Yeah, it seems like across the board too, there could be some marketing and communications information too to think about. Abby, do we have another slide?
We do.
I'm just going to talk through the next steps really quickly. I think this has been a tremendously helpful conversation, so thank you so much, and really wide-ranging too. So you've given us a lot to think about. We're moving on to phase 2, and so that gives us that chance to, like we talked about, kind of consult and think about these priority projects and recommendations. And we'll be talking to both more local stakeholders, local or regional. So I think we've heard some ideas of folks that might be important to connect to tonight. But if you have ideas of who we should run some projects by that we haven't heard from, that would be great to hear. We're also going to be taking some of your ideas and trying to line them up with these subject matter experts. So things like the truck delivery, some of the branding, some of the retail tenant mix, those are the types of additional help and expertise we can bring in. Then we're going to move into coming back together and collaboratively kind of sharing ideas and creating recommendations together with you all, working toward a final list of projects that will have kind of a project template, so it's really clear and actionable, and hopefully can be something that you all can move forward. And it could range from everything from, you know, some of these kind of program initiatives that we've talked about to more physical changes or improvements like Dave's street trees or other things like that. So you've given us lots to think about. Senior Center Director, good idea from Sue in terms of another stakeholder. Marilyn.
Do you present to or discuss your ideas with the Board of Selectmen?
What is next on that front, Abby or Ethan? Have we talked about that yet?
I believe that we tried to tack ourselves on to the end of the last Board of Selectmen meeting, and I just don't think that we could fit in the schedule. So we would love to do that when and if that works out. But otherwise, our team is planning to join you all in North Brookfield for one of your upcoming movie nights.
Oh, terrific.
Oh, that's fabulous. We also would have had a lot of the Board of Selectmen here tonight, but it's their meeting night on Tuesday night, so unfortunately they're missing this. So if this is being recorded, we did plan on sending this to them so that they would have this information.
Great.
Very good. Very good.
And like Abby said, we can keep trying to line up with a lighter agenda that they might have, or to connect to them another time. And if you have continued questions, feedback, Ethan is the best way to get in touch with us. So his email is up there, and you can reach out to him and he'll feed your information and feedback to us, or we can try to get questions answered as well that you might have.
Yeah, please do email if anybody has anything, any suggestions, questions, or anything.
Anything we didn't get to touch on that's important to people, or really want to thank you for your ideas and for coming tonight. This was really great to feed into the plan.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
What do you guys think about another, I know there's plenty of like restaurants all around, but like I would like another option to go to. We have 2 pizza places and a Subway.
More diverse choices.
That's pretty much it. I would like to have another choice besides just 2 pizza joints and a Subway.
Definitely.
Yeah, I see a lot of nodding. I don't know if you can see it or if you're on your phone, but yeah, I see a lot of nodding. And I think we saw in the survey too, or we've heard also, like Abby said, bakery. So some things being specifically called out that feel like they're missing.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and family dinner options was also on there.
Yeah, kids
Okay.
sometimes eat more than pizza, I guess.
Yeah.
Not drive-throughs.
Yeah, yeah. Places to be.
Well, can I just say thank you to you, Bree and Abby, so much for doing this. And even though, you know, Eva helped out in the grant writing back in December and we got it in, but, you know, it's you guys who put all this data together so far. So I'm really excited for what's happened so far, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where we go. This is awesome.
Thank you so much for having us. We're having a great time working with North Brookfield. So excited for the next steps.
Just hearing some voices from beyond the community that are trained in doing this kind of work helps us to focus better too. I thank you so much. I mean, this is really the kind of input we need that we can't just get from the dog and and walking down the street. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. That means a lot. And that is exactly what we want to do with this project. So
Yeah,
great.
absolutely.
Great.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and contributing.
Thank you all.
thanks. Have a great night.
Thanks,
Bye. Have a
everybody.
great evening.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.